In this video, we will explain the Estimate Detail tab, where we'll define costs for our pay items that we've added to our test estimate in the previous videos. As you can see on the left hand side here, I have a 3 view of the pay items and the indirect item in my estimate. Clicking the plus or minus sign will either expand or collapse the view that we're looking at. Here you see that some of my pay items already have a plus, meaning that there's components within them. That's because when we brought those pay items from our pay item databases, there was already information in them to help us get to some costs. Let's start here with how to add cost to an empty pay item. As you can see, I already know the quantity of my excavation, 15,000 cubic yard, but since it is a detailed cost item, I don't have any cost to it. I need to add those components. I can either click that plus sign here or the add at the bottom, which will open the same screen where I'll be able to see my equipment, my labor, my crews, material, miscellaneous components, and tasks if needed. For this example, in that pay item, I'm just going to start by bringing a crew, which is, by the way, what you should do to be able to have production rates. The production rates, again, as we explained earlier in resource videos, are applied to our crews. I can see here I have an excavation crew. If I click on it, by making sure my magnifying glass is depressed here, it's going to show me what is in that crew. So I look at it here, so that's pretty much what I need, so I'm going to select that crew. Being an excavation task, I'm not going to require any material or any other miscellaneous components. I can click the add button here, and it's going to add the crew to my pay item. Now that I'm done adding components to that specific pay item, I'm going to say close. You'll notice here that adding that crew defaulted the unit of measure of my crew to 15,000 cubic yard. The crews will always try to adopt the parent's unit of measure, as it did here, and default the factor to 1 time that parent quantity. More on those factors in a few minutes. By having that crew here, gives me cost due to the fact that that crew had a production rate of 100 cubic yard per hour as a default production rate. So that means that the pay item was able to define its cost based on that production rate. I may look at it as an estimator and say, okay, well, those 15,000 cubic yard, although my average production rate being 100 cubic yard per hour, I know by looking at the job site, by looking at the plans, that it's going to take those guys 20 days to complete that work. So I can just type in 20 days here. The system will recalculate that production rate so that it's going to be based on a 20-day task instead of a 18.75 days. And that adjusted my cost and consequences here. I can look at the component my cost. Okay, but for this big excavation, I'm going to use 2 excavators. And here, because I have a feature tie in to look at associated labor types, it's going to say, do you want to update the number of excavate operators? I'm going to say okay. Just be aware that depending on your setup, this may not have happened, and you may have had to come here and adjust the number of excavator yourself. I may say, okay, I'm going to need 3 or 4 laborer because I had 2 laborer for 1 excavator. I have 2 excavator. I want 4 laborer. Again, here, if you see, that increased my cost because I have now more labor associated and more equipment associated with that pay item. Those costs will always roll up to the pay item. So if you look at the pay item now, my unit cost is $7.70 per cubic yard for a total cost of $115. If we look at the next pay item here, the mobilization, here my mobilization is by the load, and I have a crew here. So if I just say, okay, my mobilization by clicking on my pay item, let's say I have 4 loads of mobilization. I have to bring 4 things. Again, the crew always going to try to have the same unit of measure, and it already had a production rate, so it was able to figure out how long it would take to make those 4 loads and give me some costs associated with it. Here I have clearing grubbing. If you notice here, these 2 tasks, these 2 pay items here have P in the pay item icon, meaning they are plug amount here. So I'm going to see my clearing. I'm going to plug in a unit cost. Well, let's say it's 2,000 acre or 200 acres. And I'm going to say, well, my cost usually for clearing is about $220 per acre. So again, I can do that. It's quick and easy way to get cost in your estimate. However, there's no way for you to know how much money goes towards my labor, towards my equipment, and so forth. Next, I have my grubbing. Here, it's also a plug amount, but let's say that it's plug, but I don't want it plug. I want to change my cost method. If I right click, you'll see that there's several options when you right click. So I can click on cost method here. Well, let's say this one, I'm going to not do it for this job. I'm going to subcontract it. So I'm going to click subcontracted. It's going to change the cost method here from my pay item to subcontracted, and I'll be able to bring in some of my subcontracted by clicking the add button here and click some subcontractors that I want to send quotes to and click OK. The subcontractors are here, and let's say this one was also let me refresh my memory, 200 acre here. So I also need to grab my 200 acre, and now my subcontractor are returning their quotes. Let's say this first one here says, okay, I'm going to charge you $75 per acre. These guys are going to say, okay, well, I'm going to charge you $17,500 to do this task, and this guy here is going to say 16,000. Oops, like this. And then you can decide, okay, I'm going to give it to these guys here. And you see by clicking the subcontractor, that put the cost up at the pay item level. Next here I have a pay item for asphalt. I'm going to use this one here to demonstrate a few other features like factors and things of that nature. I have a task that is generally requested by customers in the square yard. So let's say that we have an area of 1250 square yard to pave. See, by putting that 1250 here, the tonnage here got calculated automatically, because as you can see, there's a little blue triangle here indicating that there's a factor. Those factors, if you right click on the quantity and you go to set value, this is where you will be able to set the factor of how many tons of asphalt per square yard. So in this case, there's 0.165 ton of asphalt per square yard, which gives us a mathematical formula here to say that I'm going to need 206.25 tons of asphalt to complete that 1250 square yard of paving. Within that task, this is where I have my crew, and I have my asphalt, which has a factor, and I also have a trucking component here. The trucking component, as we can see by clicking on it here, allows us to define our round trip, the tonnage, the round trip here. Let's say it takes an hour for the round trip, and by having my truck capacity, my cost per hour for my truck, and all the pertinent information is going to tell me how many trucks I need to complete that task in the time that the crew is paving it. I can always override the number of trucks and things like that. There's more feature of that you can find in the help file if you wanted more information on the trucking component. Now that I have cost to all my pay items, if I click back on pay item here, we'll see that all my pay items have unit cost and total cost, and I have my total cost here for my project.